Well, hello today. My speech is about traveling safely in Alaska by air and water. Whether you travel in Alaska or arrange travel in Alaska for others by air, by water, by private operator or commercial operator, there's a few things that you can do to help increase the chances of a safe return from your travels. Some important aspects of this is properly equipped aircraft or boats for the trip, a qualified operator, and acceptable weather conditions for the trip. And a decision by you to whether or not you want to participate or not. Air and boat travel have many things in common in Alaska. One of the things they have in common is in 2002, overall workplace accidents in Alaska were 42 fatalities. It was 3 times the national average. Alaskan aviation accidents that had fatalities, there were 8 fatalities that year. The average for Alaska workplace fatalities involving aviation were 19%. The national average was 1%. The information, the numbers that I have used came from a census of fatal occupational injuries done for and by the Department of Labor, Bureau of Economic Trends. The 1992 to 2002 census reported that there was over 653 fatalities in Alaska workforce accidents, 1 fatality every 6 days. Boat travel in Alaska also has a high fatality numbers compared to the national average. In workplace-related accidents, water vehicle accidents accounted for 43% of the fatalities in Alaska workforce accidents. The national average for water-related workplace fatalities is 1%. In private boating operations, alcohol consumption is the leading cause. It contributed to at least 17% of the private boating fatalities in Alaska in 2008. In private boating fatalities, there were 14 fatalities in Alaska. Alaska has one of the highest non-commercial boating fatality rates per capita in the nation. In Alaska, drowning is the second leading cause of accidental death. Boating in Alaska, like aviation, has its own unique challenges. Both of them have contributing weather factors that change suddenly as a contributing factor. There's also fewer boaters and fewer pilots around at that time of the year to help you if you do have an accident or an incident. Extra weight from hunting, extra gear for cold weather camping are also contributing factors that can add to the weight and the instability of both aircraft and of boats. What you can do to help prepare yourself for a safe return is being prepared. And one of the things is always to be prepared is to always have a life jacket available to use. Anytime that you're around water is to use that life jacket, wear that life jacket. A means of communications is always great. A VHF radio is normally recommended. Cell phones may not always have reception and be able to help you. Always file a float plan or a flight plan with a government agency or friends or family so people at least have a place to start looking for you if you don't return from your trip on time. Being prepared is what 2 groups that I've worked for many years had in common in their safety plan. One, the flight school, had a safety plan of not coming close to having any accidents or injuries. They had developed a safety plan and have been in business for over 50 years with that plan of not even coming close to having an incident or an accident. Completely contrary to this is a whitewater thrill-seeking raft adventure company, and their safety plan was well thought out and well prepared because they routinely took people to the edge of the safety margin and performed their trips right on the edge. The safety plan that they administered, that they developed over many, many years, is what they used to prepare themselves for safe trips for their passengers. Safe travel in Alaska requires three things. It requires a properly equipped, mechanically sound boat or aircraft, and it also requires a skilled, experienced current operator that has a respect for safe air travel and a record for such. It also requires a respect for weather conditions. These are all of equal importance when making a decision to participate or not, and should be considered with any or all being the deciding factor. Let's look at requiring a properly equipped boat or aircraft mechanically sound to travel in. Well, let's look at Frank. Frank has a new airplane every year. Doesn't mean that Frank's boat is mechanically sound, and it doesn't mean that it's properly equipped for the trip that you're about to take. Again, we'll look at Frank has a new boat every year. We might ask the question is, why does Frank have a new boat every year? And it's because Frank wrecks his boat every year, so he has to buy a new one. Although Frank's new boat or airplane may suffice for properly equipment, it doesn't suffice for being a required skill, experienced, current operator that has a respect for both safety and weather conditions. Another way that you can find out about whether or not an aircraft, an operator, an individual has that experience level is by contacting your local FAA, your local National Transportation Safety Board, or the U.S. Coast Guard, and ask them questions about what operators' experience should be and whether or not if they have any particular interest or information about the operator that you are planning on traveling with. One of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to summarize just a short NTSB report. The report was of an FAA chartered aircraft flying from Fire Island to Anchorage International Airport. Originally, the pilot took off. He hovered. He set back down. After he set down, they cleaned the windshield off of the mist on the inside of the airplane. While waiting about 5 minutes to retake off, one of the passengers asked if they were on weather hold, and the pilot acknowledged that they were. They took off a second time, and en route to Anchorage, when they were starting to fly over water, a surviving passenger reported that he felt real uncomfortable with the low altitude and wanted to say something to the pilot, but did not because he was concerned that he would break the pilot's concentration. The FAA, the National Transportation Safety Board, gave this causes of this accident was low altitude, clearance, and weather and clearance. Both of those were situated with the pilot in command. Factoring causes of the accident were weather conditions of snow, weather conditions of low ceiling, weather conditions of whiteout, and glassy water. A study done by the National Transportation Safety Board in 1980 identified three major factors in Alaska's aircraft accidents. Those three factors were inadequate airport facilities, insufficient navigational aids, and the Bush syndrome, pilots taking unwarranted risks in order to complete a flight. In conclusion, I'd like to point out that safe travel in Alaska relies on your decision to participate or not. Requires a properly equipped airplane, mechanically sound, or boat to travel in. Requires a skilled, current, experienced operator. Requires a respect for the weather conditions. I would like to note that all three of those factors were involved in the fatalities of the aircraft accident I described. Those were experienced FAA employees, and they all had a decision of whether or not they wanted to fly that day or not. There was 2 or 3 times when the helicopter first took off, to when the helicopter took off the second time, and to when the helicopter was en route, and one of the passengers' own words and quotes was he felt uncomfortable, but he didn't want to disturb the pilot. I would like to point out that the thoughts of that one survivor could have saved all if he possibly would have acted on that question at the time of the accident. Thanks. And now I'm going to show Quinn and Monica, my audience for the day.
Hi there.
And then I had this little visual aid that they got to look at while we were doing it.